Well, hello and welcome to all of you who have joined us today. My name is Monica Harris. I'm the Rails Executive Director, and good afternoon. Before we begin today, I just wanted to thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time to be here with us today. I know there's a comment in the chat asking if the recording will be available for viewing later on. We do make these available, and we are recording now. So thank you very much for the question. We are really excited to get underway, and we've got some really great guests for you today. Hopefully you can see a copy of an agenda in the chat, but you can see there's some great things coming up. But before we get started, we wanted to offer a little bit of general Rails news for all of you to hear. So first off, I am really excited to announce our newest Rails staff member. Maggie Toman is starting today as our library resource specialist. Welcome, Maggie. You can see her on your screen today. She is reporting to Layla Heath, who is the Director of Library Resources and Programs. Prior to joining Rails, Maggie worked as the Adult Department Director at the Glen Ellen Public Library, and she's also worked in various other libraries in different roles over the last 20 years. We are thrilled to have her join the team, so welcome, Maggie. I am also pleased to share that Rails will be holding its September board meeting at the newly renovated Bloomington Public Library. We are very thankful to all of the folks at Bloomington to host us. This is going to be on Friday, September 27th. The board meeting starts at 1 p.m. and all are welcome to attend, but there will also be a networking event at 11:30 a.m. that day. Everyone is invited to either or both events. This is a great opportunity if you've ever wanted to meet directly with some of our Rails board of directors. Please register via L2 if you plan to attend, just so we know how many attendees to expect, and we hope to get to see you there. And as many of you know, conference season is almost here. At Rails, we love conference season because we get to meet a lot of you directly and in person. It's a great chance to see all of you. Rails will have booths at the upcoming Illinois Library Association annual conference in Peoria, as well as at the ISLE annual conference in Tinley Park. We invite you to swing by our booths to say hello, let us know what's going on in your libraries, let us know if you have any suggestions for things that you'd like to see from Rails. Thank you so much to the ILA and ISLE staff and volunteers to help to plan these conferences. These are enormous undertakings, and it really allows for so many opportunities for us to learn from one another. So we do want to thank our colleagues. These are wonderful events, and we can't wait to be there and to see you. We also want to let you know about a brand new media offering that's coming from Rails. We are premiering a new school library focused podcast called Can't Shelve This. This series is co-hosted by Rails data analyst Jeanette Durucki, who you're going to hear from a little bit later in our program, as well as Heartland Library Membership Coordinator Leah Gregory. The first episode is set to premiere on Tuesday, September 10th, and Rails Digital Marketing and Communications Specialist Ola Gronsky is the series producer. Jeanette and Leah have a really amazing rapport. I think you'll really enjoy listening to them. So I hope that you'll give it a listen. You will see more information at our Rails e-news next week, and make sure you download wherever you get your podcasts. We also want to make sure that you know about our upcoming Rails Continuing Education event grants. These are an opportunity for networking groups, consortia, and individual libraries to determine what they need in regards to continuing education and ask for the funding to support those needs. We are offering grants of up to $2,000 to support impactful continuing education initiatives. The next deadline for these grants is coming up soon on October 1st, 2024. So we do want to make sure that you're aware and can get in those proposals. There is also a second deadline for spring of February 3rd, 2025, if you have something that you're planning that's still in the works. So please take a look at that, and we hope that you'll have a chance to look at it. There is a link to those CE events grants in the chat. Finally, we wanted to note that legislative season is getting underway. The Illinois Library Association will be offering their legislative meetups in early December. Please stay tuned for more information from them soon. We believe it's very important that libraries stay on top of the legislative proposals that impact our libraries and our field. So please keep reading the Rails e-news and make sure to sign up for all of our email lists. We hope to keep everyone updated. So that is the news that we have to share from Rails today, but we've got a lot of really great things that we're going to move on to now. And we're going to start with a presentation about the Illinois State Library statewide e-resource program that we are so excited about. So please allow me to introduce you to Greg McCormick, Director of the Illinois State Library, and Susanna Jones, Library Program Specialist at the Illinois State Library. Welcome, Greg and Susanna.
Well, thank you, Monica. It's a pleasure to be here with everyone. As Monica mentioned, I'm joined today by Susanna Jones. Susanna is one of the newer members of the staff here at the State Library. She joined us after her time at the Chatham Area Public Library District here in Central Illinois, and some of you may be familiar with that library, as that is the library of the current Illinois Library Association president, Amy Byers. So we are thrilled to have Susanna here. She's a name I hope all of you will learn to know more, because for this program that we're going to be speaking about, she is the point of contact here at the State Library, and she has done a terrific job so far as we remain still in the implementation phase of this, and we'll explain a little bit that further with the e-resources and statewide database package. Giving you, a little bit of background on this, I know this is something that many in our state have spoken about. It was a long time coming to Illinois for a package of this type, but almost immediately upon taking office, Secretary Janulius agreed to including an appropriation that would support this, not simply for a one-time purchase, but ongoing funding for this within the Secretary of State and State Library budget for years to come. Recognizing that this is a huge issue for the library community. In 2023, 51% of public libraries in the state reported on their annual report that they were not using online databases subscriptions at all. That's not an insignificant number when you think of 51%. We have no data about the schools that we can rely on who was and who wasn't using anything. And if you can imagine the number of buildings. But we embarked upon a package that could be accessed by all 1,800 plus libraries in this state with over 4,000 library locations. The idea was to support statewide needs for access to high quality and reliable information, extend library services for all Illinois residents by providing access to information and ideas, content, and resources, and remove barriers, ensure that all Illinoisans, regardless of their geographic location or economic conditions, have equitable access to the same trustworthy information resources. We're pleased that we believe the package that was procured through EBSCO does that. We know it does not do everything, but it's a significant buy for the state of Illinois. Included in that, there are general interest resources. There are educational resources specific to pre-K to 12th grade levels, academic educational resources, health resources, business resources, reference ebooks, and even some test preparation for licensing, certification, career preparation, and workforce skills building. We are certain that this will provide access to a database package that was currently not available in public libraries and schools in the state. and will really support the needs of the residents. And it's also going to help those libraries who were already making these purchases to utilize their own resources differently with this package, whether that's going to be an expansion of what they already had from EBSCO or looking to other resources that they may need to purchase for their community. So I'm going to step away from this. I'm going to let Susanna take over at this point. She's going to share information with you that we also shared at the recent Directors University program. We still are in implementation in many respects. We focused upon public libraries first, and we are now working with school libraries. And as they have come back to their school year, you can imagine all of the questions that Susanna has been addressing. And this is also very important because we've not yet reached out to the unserved in this state, which will have access to this through geolocation, because this project will allow for that. But there is a wrinkle with geolocation that has come up this week, and we have to resolve a few matters with that. So there may be some questions from some of you regarding that. But with that, I'm going to turn this over to Susanna and let her give you an update of where we are and introduce herself even better. So.
Sounds good. Thank you, Greg. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, good. Thank you, Greg. Yep, he did a lovely job of summarizing what this wonderful program and package is. So a lot of people want to know, well, how can I access it? So we are encouraging libraries to get links to the databases from EBSCO and post them to your library website. That way your staff and your patrons can access them anytime. EBSCO will create custom links for each library. The benefit of that is that your libraries can check the usage statistics, and you can see how well are your patrons using the resources. So if you have already had EBSCO databases, you can just contact EBSCO like you normally would. But if not, you can contact their customer support. Their phone number is 800-758-5995. And just let them know you need to be part of the Illinois statewide database package, and they can get things moving from there. The Illinois State Library will also have a website with all of the databases available that anyone can use. So if your library maybe doesn't have a website, maybe you're just using Facebook, or you can't edit much on it, you'll still be able to use the forthcoming website to get access to that. So again, that is forthcoming, but we will be able to do that as well. And that, I think, will be a big proponent in the unserved. So if we can get, our website out there, you don't have to have a library card to sign in. You just click and go. So that will be a big part of that. So like Greg said, we are still in the implementation phase and getting libraries hooked up with EBSCO. And boy, I can tell when school started because we've got a lot of school questions, but that's wonderful. So we're starting to get them all hooked into. I do have some training sessions coming up, which will talk more about implementing, and now I have these links. What do I do with them? So those are starting, the first one is tomorrow, and then throughout the month of September. Different trainings for public libraries and schools, and I do have one for specials and academics. So those can all be found on the L2 events calendar. So I'm gonna record the last two, the last school program and the last public program, but I will send them, even if you came to the first session, I'll send it to everyone who's registered. That's kind of my plan there. What else was I going to say? I did kind of, if I've got a few more minutes, want to show at least two databases, mostly just to show you the interface of how they'll look and how most of the databases will be accessed. So give me a second to share my screen. So this screen that you're seeing now is in the EBSCOhost database or interface. So that is what most of the databases will be accessed through. And it's just your basic article database. Simple search box here in the middle. The most common filters, they've made little buttons down underneath that. And above the search box, you can see what you're searching. So here we're searching the database Academic Search Elite, but if you click on that, you'll see all the other databases. So once you're in EBSCOhost, you can switch things around and tweak what you're searching. Again, most of the databases will be in here. The other interface I wanted to show you is called Explora. And this one was created with public libraries and schools in mind. It's much more browsable. So you'll see it still has the same features. It's got the search box up at the top. You can see what databases you're searching, and it's got those little filters. But then there's much more visual appealing items. And if you don't know a topic, but you know you need something on US history, you can kind of dive down into topics that way. So Explora is the other interface. And most of the resources can be accessed in Explora, not all. So those two interfaces I just wanted to show briefly because that's what most of the databases will be accessed through. There are a few one-offs that don't use either of those, and that's Novelist, Learning Express, which is the test prep items in there, and then what's the last one? The auto repair, because you kind of choose your car and your make and your model. So those three are separate interfaces because they're not article databases. But I just wanted to give you a peek of what that will look like. So I think that's all I had in terms of where we are, but
I think that
we're excited. So ask me any questions. Oh, I can give you my contact information real quick too, because I will gladly answer any questions. My email is sjones@ilsos.gov. Thank you.
I was just going to remind that many public libraries in the state, at least, already are EBSCO clients and may not realize that because of the Novelist initiative that the state supported many years ago. So in many cases, there's an account set up for your public library already, whether you realize that or not, or had been purchasing anything since that time. So I don't know exactly who's in the audience today, but I'm guessing that it's heavily public library oriented this afternoon. I could be incorrect about that, but certainly reach out to Susanna and she can get you further information on how we can move forward with this.
Thank you, Greg and Susanna. I don't see a lot of questions in the chat right at this moment, but I do just want to point out, Greg, what you highlighted earlier just about the impact that this is going to have statewide. I think it's hard to overstate it. Just the understanding of financially, the resources that'll be made available to the libraries that did have databases and how they can reallocate those resources to serve their communities. And then the 51% of libraries that didn't have access to these resources at all that will now have access is really pretty amazing. So thank you so much for this information today. And thank you, Susanna, for showing the interface and for sharing your email. I know these events that are coming up soon, Dan posted the link to those events where you can register there in the chat. So if you'd like to attend and ask Susanna the questions that you have, I know that she'll be happy to do that. So we're really excited. Thank you so much for sharing this with us today.
You're welcome.
Right. Next on our agenda, we're going to be moving on to a really important topic at any time, but especially as we enter back to school in this moment. And that's how all of us, regardless of your library type, can advocate for school libraries. I'm pleased to introduce you to Carolyn Kinsella, Executive Secretary of the Association of Illinois School Library Educators, also known as ISLE. Welcome, Carolyn.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very excited to be here and very happy that I was asked. A little bit of a background. Some of you may be very familiar with ISLE and some of you not so much. We are the, Monica, woo woo, she's my, my cheerleader this afternoon. School library, we are the organization for Illinois school librarians. We're mostly a volunteer organization. Most of the chair people in the organization are full-time working school librarians. There are a few of us who are retired people, and we have part-time, and then all of us are part-time and we all work from home. But if you get on the website and you see an email that says, email ISLE at, you're going to get me. That's my exec secretary at aisled.org. So now you have a name and a face with that exec secretary. So I'm happy to answer your questions when you send them in. Our big things that we do are the Reader's Choice, which of course we open up to the public library as well as all school libraries. That's the Monarch, the Blue Stem, and the Lincoln. We partner with the Caudle. The Caudle predates the other three, so they have a separate board, but we work very closely together with them. We also have the Illinois School Library Standards, or also known as Linking for Learning, which is in the process of being updated. There should be a new update by 2025. Yay. We're in the copy editor stage for that. That is the standard by which school libraries in Illinois are held. It's a lot of school librarians use it, or it is used for their evaluation. And so it's a very important document for school libraries. The other thing that we offer is ISAIL, which are the educational objectives. So if a librarian always has to meet those library objectives. How and what are the students learning according to the state standards? And so we have ISAIL that puts those two together. So those are the things that we try to do because, of course, our mission, it sounds really great, but basically all it is we support the students and the librarians in the state of Illinois. That's our goal, and that's always been our goal. So, but we can't do any of this by ourselves. Well, as I said, we're a nonprofit, and so we partner with everybody in the state who has any stake in school libraries, and that should be all of you. So RAILS, Heartland, Illinois State Library, of course. We also work nationally throughout the state with Illinois ILA, Illinois Library Association, ALA, and AASL. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, remember, we're always stronger together, and that's where advocacy comes in. Advocacy is the really big thing. If you know the state of school libraries, you know that we are a dwindling group of people. The state does not require that every school district has a school librarian. They definitely don't require that every building has a school librarian. And in many schools, there is a person in the library, but that person may be called the librarian, but is definitely not, may not be trained, not certified. Of course, there's certification for the librarian, just like there's certification for the math teacher or the science teacher or the second grade teacher. So there's no requirement for that. And so we have started an initiative along with the support of everybody else. And I can't thank RAILS enough, who, I don't know how many years ago was it now, Monica, like 4 or 5, I think 4. When you started, we realized that there was no data. As Greg said, we didn't know what schools have databases. There's very limited data on school libraries. So it was very hard to move forth with any kind of initiative on advocating on a state level for school libraries, because we didn't know what was what. Which schools had libraries with certified librarians? Which schools had one in the district and none in the buildings? So that kind of data now with the help of Rails, we got it. We have the Slate project. If you've haven't gone into it, well, I think it's amazing, interesting reading, but then, that's because I'm the school person. But it's set up like the school report card. So if you looked at your student's school report card, you can look at the Slate project through Rails, and it will tell you what your district has and that kind of information. There we go. Monica's posting it for me. Thank you. So with that Slate project, that was one of the first hurdles we had to get over. We have in ISLE now a task force and which has been chartered or directed to determine the next steps, or what can we do for trying to get legislation that encourages or requires, or whatever verb we're going to put in there, school librarians in the school buildings for the students. Because I'm kind of speaking to the choir here, but we know that in the information age, with the amount of disinformation, with the amount of even AI, training on what is fact and what is fiction, what is AI and what is real. How do you know the liar from the non-liar? And if you don't have training on how to do that, we all realize, we see it with the people who walk in our libraries every day. They don't know. And they don't know because they haven't had that education, and they haven't had that education because there weren't school libraries. Media literacy is required to be taught in the state of Illinois, but much to your surprise, maybe, it is not taught through the library. Oftentimes it comes through the tech department, or it may be a week, a few lessons in that introductory technology class, and that's it. Instead of training and teaching that occurs all the way through, which is what the school librarian does. That's why we know that school librarians are very important. So advocacy is something we all can do. You advocate for yourselves, we advocate for ourselves, we advocate for each other, because let's face it, we all have that same clientele. The school students are also the public library. The school parents go to the public library, and vice versa. So we have these bonds together with our clients, with our patrons, with our students. So I'm going to share my screen a little bit and just show you the advocacy page. ISLE has a fairly robust website, aisled.org. We may have some broken links like every website. Just tell me and I'll send it to the web person, and we'll work on those. But one of the pages that we do have is our advocacy page. And the advocacy page, I'm trying to share. There we go. This advocacy page is right from the AISLED page. And it has, I got to move my other, sorry. Here we go. Current trends, highlights, how do we keep resources, things that you can do to advocate. I have found that school librarians are maybe not intuitive people to advocate. We tend to be a little quieter, don't like to make big noise, hate to put the spotlight on us, but we know that if we need to survive, we must do it. So here are things, current trends, what are what's happening, how to write a letter to the editor. The August 22nd of the Advocate had all sorts of ways to advocate for yourselves. And so this is the information from there. Resources, these are kind of interesting. If you come across an article, I realized yesterday, day before when I was working on this, that we need to update some of these articles.
Looks like Carolyn's having
a on how to advocate for school libraries. So so these are the things that we try to do. We have the slide study. I don't know if anybody is familiar with the slide study down here. This is kind of what started a lot of this when Keith Curry Lance called me and said, Carolyn, there's no information for Illinois on the federal level. And I went, I know. I know. And we feel better now that we know that it hasn't been out there, and that now we're getting that information as best we can. So the Keith Curry Lanch and the Deborah Cashel, I believe, Cashel study is amazing. And it tells about the state of school libraries. So Illinois State Library, of course, every library, we are partnering also with every library on this issue as well. Our goal is to get legislation to change the fact that school librarians are not required in the state of Illinois. We know that that is a big ask. We know that this is not something that comes lightly, and we know that it's going to take a lot of partners to do this. If one of the first steps is to let people know what's happening, and then to also explain to people what is the job of the school librarian, why that position is so important for the health of not only our school children, but for our state, because an informed electorate is the best person out there. And if they don't know how to get and obtain information, it's very hard to have that person. So I just kind of wanted to show you, this is, you know, the advocacy page on the ISLE website. So I can stop sharing here. That's a really rough, fairly quick overview of ISLE and advocacy, but I really wanted to share what our goals are. I think that's, and our goals with, we haven't done this without consultation, of course, with the systems, and we're working with all sorts of partners to move forward, to see what we can do, to get the information that will help us and inform the rest of the people, the decision makers, on why it's so important to have that school librarian. I will entertain any question, or Monica or Dan or Joe, if there's something that I missed that you wanted me to highlight. I don't want to, I could go on and on this for like hours, but I know that your time is very valuable. And I was trying to be as succinct as possible. Leah Gregory has said, if only for the will of the group, it would happen. The passion and the will. She's great with that. So what else?
Well, I just in the chat, so if you're taking a look, there are some links to the slide study that Carolyn mentioned. There's a link to the ISLE page so that you can look at some of the links that Carolyn mentioned for advocacy if you're interested in learning more. There's also a link to the School Library Advocacy Through Education, or SLATE project, that'll show you the stats on what's happening in Illinois with some of these individual schools and what's happening with libraries. Carolyn, you mentioned the partnership that's happening. We've been so pleased as our organization, Rails, to be part of this partnership for school libraries with ISLE and also with Heartland and the Illinois State Library and the Illinois Library Association. It's been a really fruitful way to really understand what is happening. And I will say you are really making some really strong efforts, especially on pushing for more certified school librarians. So I want to congratulate you on that work, but also let all of the members here know that this stuff that's happening is really important, and you're going to be hearing more. So we wanted to give you a sense of some of the work that's happening through ISLE.
I hope that the public librarians, directors that are here today, that you partner with your schools, and that you understand that hopefully your school districts, your feeder schools, that's what I always call them, your feeder schools into the public library, have certified librarians. And if they don't, maybe you can help with some of the training. You can encourage that school board, go, look, you have these databases. Who's going to teach these? Who's going to curate and teach? We can't put all those EBSCO databases out there to every school child. Oh my God, I'm sure those are 2/3 of the questions that Susanna's getting. Because I see them all on the listserv. That's exactly it. Who's going to curate those? Who's going to know which ones to put in? Who's going to know what access those students need? That's the person who's got the curriculum, the early childhood, that type of training. So please try to partner as much as you can with your school libraries. I always found I retired after too many years, no, many, many years as a school librarian, and then took this IEL gig. But working with the public library was some of the most exciting work that I did, because I felt like it was the way to really reach all of our students.
Yeah. And we always get more done when we can do it together, don't you think?
Yes.
And I know so many of our members out there on this call have really incredible and fruitful partnerships with their local public libraries or school libraries, making sure that they're working together. So if you have stories that you would like to share with us here at Rails, we would love for you to contact us, or Carolyn's pointing, she'd like to hear about it at IL2, just so that we can encourage and share with all of our colleagues for how we can grow some of those things more. And you can hear Carolyn's passion in when she talks about this.
I kept jotting notes for the last week, and I was like, okay, we can't do all of this, but I have a real passion for this, because I firmly believe that this is an important part for our school children. And it pains me to see that in the last 30, 40 years, it's just been a slow death by cut after cut after cut. And I know school libraries aren't alone, and I know this happens all the way across, but I think that we're really feeling it now, because people don't know what a school library can be and do and have, and what a difference it makes in the long-term education of a child as to an adult. Because if you don't know how to find and analyze that information as that school child, it's never going to happen as an adult, or it's going to be that much harder to get that training. So as all of you train your patrons in these new databases, remember, some of them didn't have a school librarian growing up.
Thank you, Carolyn, for a really great presentation. And please, all of you, let us know if there's more that you'd like to know or to hear. There's a shout out for you in the chat about your enthusiasm and the provided advocacy resources. Thank you.
Thank you so.
Of course. This is a good segue into our next speaker, Jeanette Durucki. Jeanette is a data analyst here at Rails, but you often hear her in consultation with all of these school library issues as well. She's one of the hosts, as we mentioned before, of the Can't Shelve This podcast. She did most of the work associated with that Slate project that you see there. So she does a lot with school libraries, but she does even more. And so today she's here to talk to you about a brand new data study called Illinois Libraries Agencies of Impact. And I'm going to pass it on to Jeanette to show us more.
Thanks so much. I'm going to go ahead and queue up my slides. Give me just 1 second to get those shared. Hopefully everybody can see that all right. And I'm so happy to be here today. I don't know how I can follow Carolyn, but I'm going to do my best to try. I'm here to share our recently released report, Illinois Libraries Agencies of Impact. This data study was inspired by the report you see here on the left, Libraries, How They Stack Up, which was published by OCLC in 2003. This report examines the impact of libraries on both a national and a global scale in 5 main areas: economic impact, logistics, as a local attraction or destination, as an information provider, and as a profession. And I was given this report and asked to envision how we might create an updated version that could show the value and impact of libraries in our state and local communities and help libraries tell their stories. I examined those same 5 target areas at the state and national level, and the result is the report you see on the right. Our study isn't a complete replica of the original because some metrics weren't available at the state level, but we replicated measures from the original when we could and identified suitable replacements when needed. We also added several items to provide additional data or context to a particular section. There were several groups, including the Rails executive team and the Rails advocacy committee, that provided input and feedback that helped guide and shape this report, and I'm really grateful for their assistance. Many of the original data sources used by OCLC 20 years ago are obsolete today, so a lot of the initial work went into identifying data sources. As you can see from the logos on this slide, I used a variety of sources. The data gathered is from 2021, which was the most complete year of data available at the time that this project began. Each topic is featured on its own page, and we used a heavily visual infographic style to make otherwise dense information much easier to read. Each section began as a simple spreadsheet, so it's come a long way from that format to what you see in front of you. You'll find some text blocks to provide context or explanation, but we did really try to keep those very brief. Our aim was to make these pages readily shareable for libraries to use in advocacy efforts, as conversation starters, or to inform their communities. I do want to shout out to the Rails communication team. I had the privilege of working with them, and particularly Nicole Zimmerman, on the creation and distribution of this report. And without them and the help of countless others at Rails, we couldn't have brought this to all of you. I thought the best way to share the study would be to walk through each section and tell you a little bit about it. If you have questions, you can drop those in the chat, or you can hold them until the end. We'll begin with libraries as economic engines. This section examines libraries as an industry and an economic driver. We often talk about libraries in terms of their funding, but as many of you are aware, libraries have purchasing power. This extends beyond information materials and resources into a lot of other areas, such as real estate, vehicles, building materials, furniture, and supplies. Annual spending among libraries in 2021 was $22.2 billion nationally. 5% of that is from right here in Illinois. That's much greater than other very common industries that are pervasive in our communities. This chart is on the lower left-hand side of that page, and it touches on the actual value of library spending to their communities. Libraries are constantly evaluating the value of their materials and services, and return on investment is one method used to determine that value. The chart shown here displays the ROI for print materials in public library districts across the state to give readers an idea of just how valuable libraries are. In this case, 95% of Illinois public libraries have an ROI for print materials of at least 100%, meaning that the investment in those materials is fully recovered through their circulation and use. In this next section, libraries as logistics experts, we take a look at library circulation, both directly to patrons and through interlibrary loan. It compares libraries' consumer populations, as well as their efficiency and ability to make their product available, to that of delivery and logistics experts like Amazon and FedEx. There's a fun statistic in here comparing library card holders to Amazon Prime members, with libraries coming out just ahead. And all of this better quantifies and conveys the scale at which libraries serve communities. In almost every area, libraries are on par with or exceed the performance of these two companies, circulating approximately 8.5 million items per day nationwide. I wanted to highlight this chart, which is found at the top of that section, because it reflects circulation and interlibrary loan at public and academic libraries in the US. The figures in this chart are a bit staggering, because not only does it demonstrate a high volume of lending to their own communities, but the interlibrary loan figures begin to create this baseline understanding of the impact of resource sharing. When you're talking about millions of items being shared nationwide, that's not something to take for granted. There's a lot of work and logistics that go into making that happen. Moving on to the third section, this section addresses libraries as community anchors. It explores the number of registered cardholders in both Illinois and the US, but it also looks at library visit rates and how they measure up to other destinations people visit each year. There are very few places within your community that you can visit for free with no expectation that you'll spend any money, and libraries are one of those. And how many of them also offer free programming? Not very many, but your libraries do. So to give perspective to the number of visitors libraries greet each year, that visitor total is compared with the attendance at all major professional home sporting events and NCAA Division I, II, and III collegiate football and basketball games. You can see the difference between these values represented by the arrows on this slide. In Illinois, libraries host 2.5 times as many visitors annually as attend those sporting events combined. And to further emphasize the value of libraries as a cost-free destination, each library visit is compared to the average cost of attending one of those sporting events, which is $71. If every person who visited a library paid $71 to enter, public libraries alone would have generated nearly $1.5 billion additional dollars in 2021. So in this fourth section, libraries as global information suppliers, we examine the materials libraries make available to their communities. The data included here shows the volume of print materials available and the digital. This section also looks at the vast number of libraries in our state and the robust network that they create, particularly through our 3 library systems. Including this information is intended to give an idea of the number of access points for information across the state, as well as their general geographic distribution. All this attempts to quantify the value and impact of resource sharing in Illinois as well. So let's talk a little bit more about that now. I want to call your attention to this portion in the center of the section that's devoted specifically to delivery and resource sharing, which is one of the most valuable services, both financially and operationally, that libraries offer. When we look at the number of items shared through delivery or interlibrary loan and the average book price for library materials, we can estimate that the value of the delivered materials was just over $200 million. Looking at this in terms of the value of that service, we can again talk about return on investment or ROI. And library systems spent almost $6.5 million to deliver those materials. But as you can see here, the return on investment was over 3,000%. So I'd say that's more than worthwhile, and our libraries are definitely seeing the benefit of that service. This brings me to the final section of the study, which is librarians, a vibrant and sizable profession. The information on this page provides a lot of really valuable context to the 4 preceding sections. Up until now, the report really discusses the power of libraries, their value, and the importance that they have within the information landscape. This page examines the people behind that work at each agency and institution. It explores the number of librarians at both the state and national levels, including a comparison to some US city populations for perspective. There's a chart at the bottom that serves to compare the number of librarians with other professions in Illinois. Overall, librarianship is a profession that is relatively sizable, but because of the nature of this type of work, the size of our workforce might not be as visible as other public-facing roles. All right, so that brings me to the end of the report. I hope that this has helped you understand a little bit more about it and how you can use it to tell your story. Hopefully your library has already received a copy of this report, but if you haven't, all Rails member libraries are receiving a copy by either delivery or regular mail. You can also view a copy online at the My Library Is website by scanning the QR code or using the URL you see here. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm not sure if there are any in the chat or how I can help.
Thank you, Jeanette. I think you all can see how much went into this report, and I want to in particular thank Jeanette and Nicole Zimmerman for all of the work that went into this and all of the people who touched this product. I know it was a long time in the making. We really sincerely hope that this can be part of your efforts as you try to tell your story to the people who are involved with your library, whether that be your trustees, your local Rotary Club, going to funders. We want to make sure that you have the information that you need to be able to help to tell the story. And that's actually part of the Rails strategic plan, is to help you tell that story. So our hope is that you'll use this and that you'll also let us know how you're using it. So let us know if this is something that you end up sharing with someone or if it has impact. Jeanette, there are not a lot of questions in the chat, but there are a lot of comments from people who really found some of the figures staggering and who really were excited to see the report and to see what can come of it. So I do want to thank you all for your comments in the chat to let us know. But please do, I want to encourage you to reach out to us and let us know how you're using it and what you're doing with it. So please don't be shy. Any other questions or anything anybody wants to share with Jeanette for now? Thank you so much for the report today, Jeanette. We really appreciate it. And thank you all for giving us the opportunity to share this exciting new project.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. Thanks so much for your time.
Well, that brings us to the end of our program. We do reserve a little bit of time at the end. So if you have any news that you would like to share with the group, you're welcome to type it into the chat to share some news that's going on at your library. So now is your moment if you have a desire to share. Well, while we're waiting just this moment, I want to thank you all for spending the time with us today. If you're in a school, welcome back to school. If you are just settling into some nice fall weather this week, I hope that you can enjoy that as well. We really appreciate the time that you spent with us. And please don't hesitate to get in contact with anyone at Rails for any needs that you have. And we hope that you all have a great rest of your day. Have a wonderful day, everybody.